Hey, this is Angelica. Welcome to the Juan of Words podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, YouTube, juanofwords.com. If you listen to an episode and you like what you hear, leave us a review or maybe a comment or two. We hope you enjoy this episode. Hey, Angelica here, alone again, reading some of Juan's old blog post on his blog. For those who don't know, Juan has been blogging for the last 10 years. And when I met him, he was a journalist, amazing writer, but I didn't get to see his creativity until he started writing in his blog post, which is where he started this entire, this is where the podcast comes in from his actual blog. So in this blog post, it was written in 2011, Jesus heavens. He talks about how we met, or at least the way he thinks we met. I'm not sure very much, but I hope you enjoy it. Written by my husband, read by me. So here we go. My Almost Big Fat Mexican Wedding by Juan Alanis. We never actually had a wedding. We sort of talked about it some more, and then finally opted to low-key exchange nuptials instead. I mean, we literally just showed up at a retired judge's home in a nearby little town one day and asked him to marry us. Well, wait, let me correct myself. It wasn't just any old day. It was Valentine's Day. And we didn't actually just drive up. We had to get our marriage license at the courthouse first, and then make an appointment with this viejito of a judge. Still, there probably wasn't as much romance as there should have been. We didn't even take a picture to commemorate the occasion. The thing is, though, we've never actually been one of those cute, typical couples that does everything according to custom. Me imagino that we have had a blast in a big fat wedding, as we had talked about for so long. And hey, no one says we can't still do it one day, but our approach, which was much more practical. You ready to get married? Yeah. Okay, let's do this. We did it. Went to dinner at a swanky restaurant to celebrate it, text our families that we were now married. Took in everyone's varied reactions. Both our moms were kind of upset a little. Wow. And then we were done with it. The next day, we went back to just being Angelica and Juan. And that's the way it's been ever since. What's more interesting and kind of ironic is how we actually met. For years, we actually known each other without knowing it. I was a print reporter in those days, and she worked with one of my sisters at a local nonprofit. Because of the beat I was covering, of course, Hispanic issues, I'd often stop by at their offices for a quick visit, or rather long one, depending on what my mood was. Yet in all those years of playing hooky for my beats and just hanging out, I never actually met her there. We never even saw each other. It wasn't until we were throwing a going away party for mi hermana a couple of years later that we actually met. De allí, the rest is history. Recollected in some different versions. Angelica claims I was drunk and wouldn't leave her alone, and that's how she ended up giving me her number. What actually happened, though, at least according to me, is that she was just as flirtatious as I was and gave me her phone number quite willingly, dare I say, with as much anticipation as I for getting... I'm sorry, Juan, but that's not true. Such a lie. Okay, let me keep reading. All right. Dare I say, with as much why can't I read this? With as much anticipation as I for getting it. We had debated about this for hours, so let's not even get started. The craziest part about this, though, and we both agree on this part, was that after we started spending more and more time together, we realized we had actually been pretty close to meeting earlier on several occasions. Somehow, sometimes always managed to keep us apart. Something always managed to keep us apart. I guess until the time was right. It's still kind of wild to think about. In one picture my sister had taken months before her going away party, Angelica and I are both actually in the same photo. Their agency was having a public town hall meeting. She was working the event. I was sitting in the front panel talking heads, taking notes, and neither one of us had any clue that in a couple of months our lives would be in sync. Who knows what would have happened if we never met at that party? How would our encounter have been? Would there be alcohol involved inevitably? I'm convinced it would have happened no matter what. Como quien dice, siempre hay un roto para un descosido. All right. So let me get my version of things. That's not true, Juan. He was drunk. He was actually the first person that I was introduced to. So I arrived at the party, and then Juan's sister, the first person she introduced me to, was his brother, and his brother's partner was also there. They were there together, and they were sitting like right across from me. And I was sitting with some other girls that actually worked at the same like nonprofit, right? And yeah, his brother was like completely hammered, and he was like, "Oh my God, nice to meet you. You want a drink?" And I was like, excuse me. I was like, yeah, I want a drink. Of course I want a drink. I'm here to like have a good time. Of course I want a drink. Mind you, I was, how old was I then? 22, 23? Yeah, but 22, 23. Oh my goodness, that's been so long ago. And he offered me a drink, and I was like, of course. Why would, I'm here to party. I'm here to give, what I know, Maria, right? She doesn't go by Maria with the family, but Maria, I'm here to despedir Maria. I'm here to party with all you guys. Yeah. And so it was a really long table, and she also had her friends, and then her family was also there. And that's how I was introduced to her brother. And me and her brother and his partner, we were just kind of we were all just having a really good time. We were hitting it off, having conversation. The mood was very light. And then all of a sudden, to my left, I kept sensing somebody staring at me, and they would just look over at me and then just stare at me. You know how somebody stares at you and it feels like they're just they're piercing so hard. You're like, can you stop? Burning holes in stop it. And so he was drunk. And so sure enough, I was in a good mood. By this time, I had already had a drink in me, and I was talking to his other brother, and I kept feeling him here, you know what I'm saying? So I kept looking over, and I'm smiling. And it is now. It wasn't for a little while, but it is now. And it was then where I always had this mood where I was just always smiling. Whether I was in a good mood or not, I was smiling. And so I every time I would turn around to look at the table, I would smile at everybody. But this one person, which happened to be Juan, would not stop. He would smile. I would smile, and he would smile bigger. And I was like, strange. Okay. I have to be honest. At first glance of Juan, I didn't really know him, and I didn't get to know him. So it's not that he wasn't my type. It's just the fact that I didn't know him for him to understand or to know if he was my type. I'm not the kind of person that who's for me at least, I'm not the kind of person who's ooh, yeah, look at him, and I'm not giddy over people's appearances. I am very drawn and attracted to when people start talking. So the recollection of those versions wasn't necessarily true, but he was sitting directly diagonal from me, and every time I would glance, I would smile, and he would smile bigger and bigger, and it was very awkward. And so what ended up happening was that I think his brother moved over or something, or he made his way to sit directly in front of me, and he just would not shut up. He just kept talking and talking. I think at one point, I went to the restroom or something like that. I think I went over to the restroom, and I came back, and somebody was sitting in my chair. He's like, hey, sit here, let's talk. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, let's talk. And the drinks kept coming, and I kept drinking, and he kept talking. We were talking, and he became very interesting. He started talking about what he was doing and the work he was doing, and how he was a writer. And we started talking about just the things that are our interest. And he became more and more interesting. And I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. And yeah, had he not talked to me, I don't think I would have ever been oh yeah, I'm gonna give this guy no. That's not who I am. I definitely get to know people first before I ever give them like any information at all of myself. Hardly ever even my name. I'm kidding, and I'm diving. I definitely talk to people. I tell them my name. I'm just saying for the, purposes of this story that he's giving. We talked for a really long time, and he became very interesting the longer he talked, and the more we started talking, and I was like, wow, he's an amazing person. Yeah, of course. Here's my number. Let's talk. I don't think he mentions, I don't know if he ever wrote about what happened afterwards. But if I don't get to it, here's my version of things. He actually, so he got my number. I didn't get his. That's just not the kind of person I was back then. Because if you wanted to talk to me, you'll call me. If not, hey, allá tú. And so I kind of was expecting a phone call, and either that night or the next day, and it didn't come. And I was like, wow, what an asshole. Like, who does it? Why would you ask for a number and not call? That's so stupid. It's stupid 3-day rule. It's idiotic. Like, call the person that you want to talk to. And so, the next day came, and like, I didn't get a phone call, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that's fine. Like, I move on with my life. Like, I was going to school. I was taking care of my son. I was going to work. Like, I had it on lock. Like, I was, Angelica had life figured out then. And, 3 days passed by. And I think I was off to the gym or something like that. Also, I was keeping fit, just FYI. Like, I was a gym rat, or what do they call them? No, but I was going to the gym often, like, and I was keeping myself in check. You know what I mean? Health was important to me then. So anyway, he calls, my mom answers, and she doesn't know who this person is, right? And she, like, when I come back, she makes this vague, like thing of like, yeah, somebody called you. And I was like, oh, okay, who called me? I don't know, somebody named Juan or something like that. And I'm like, Juan? I don't know Juan. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know who that is, and I left it at that. Went on my merry way. Lo and behold, a few hours later, guess who calls again? Sure enough, he sure did. And long story short, no, I'm gonna make this longer. I don't care. He basically called me and was like, hey, you remember me? And I was like, well, what do you mean I remember? I'm not sure who I'm talking to. Please remind me. And he's like, it's me, Juan. I met you. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, where do we meet? He's like, yeah, my sister's going away thing. And I'm like, oh, okay, like, yeah, definitely, sure, like, what's up? And he's like, yeah, like, yeah, I wanted to call you. And of course he apologized. Later on, he told me about the 3-day rule, and I was like, that's so stupid. But he apologized for not calling me sooner. We like set a date to like meet somewhere. We actually set the date to meet up where I worked, which was at the nonprofit. I show up, right? I drive up, and I'm there for like, I think 5-10 minutes, and he's not coming. And I'm like, I'm not waiting. Like, I'm not doing this. Like I said, I had my stuff done on lock, and I just wasn't worried about anybody. I didn't want to worry about anybody. And I was like, I gotta go. Like, this is stupid. I'm not waiting around for anybody. I'm not doing this. I don't care how cool or how interesting the guy is. It's rude. So sure enough, I got in, like, I was in my car. I turned on my car, and I seen this, like, this black 4Runner, like, coming around the corner. And I parked right next to me. He knew what I drove. I didn't know what he was driving, but he knew what I drove, because that night that I gave him my number, he had actually walked me to my car. So he pulls up right next to me, and I was like, dang, this person parked really close to me, and my car was on. Like, I was literally ready to go. Like, I was seconds away from leaving, and he shows up, and he's like waving at me, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I pulled down my window. I'm like, hey, what's up? He's like, hey, sorry, like, it just, whatever. And I was like, oh, I was about to leave. And he's like he gets taken aback by it, like he's insulted, like, oh, you were gonna leave? Like, yeah, I was gonna leave. Like, how rude. I don't know what happened. fortunate for him, I was a very forgiving person then. And so I decided to stick around, and we went on this date. And yeah, here we are. Casi 16 years, 15 years later. Married for 10. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed my entry of reading his blog post, and I hope you enjoyed my version of things. And even though you didn't ask for it, I extended on a lot. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for listening. Bye.
You know I had to do it. Had to. You back up on your bullshit, don't belong to me. You acting all sleazy, I don't like what I see. I got all the game, don't get fucked in your brain. I can do you worse than you ever